Hello and welcome to Lunchtime Politics on Channels Television. I'm Millicent Nwaka. On the news this hour, as NLC marks World Decent Work Day, it's 9 days to go as Nigerian Labour Congress digs in its heels on its ultimatum for the immediate implementation of the new national minimum wage. As federal government continues with its war against insecurity, is there an end in sight? We find out from a security expert later on the program. Plus, President Muhammadu Buhari returns from a high-level conciliatory meeting with his South African counterpart. Tempers are still flaring from some Nigerian victims of xenophobia attacks as they complain of being sidelined from the compensation talks. Welcome everyone to the program. We kick off this afternoon with the 25th session of the Nigerian Economic Summit. This is currently ongoing at the nation's capital, Abuja, with the President, members of the Federal Executive Council, state governors, captains of industry and traditional rulers in attendance. Now, the discussions at the summit are anchored on 4 sub-themes: achieving rapid industrialization, transforming education, managing demography, and sustainable peace and also security. It will also set a new agenda for Nigeria and the 4th industrial revolution that marks a critical strategic shift to a competitive private sector economy by 2050. The United Nations projects that Nigeria's population will double in 2050 and only a competitive private sector economy can achieve a rising standard of living and economic prosperity for more than 400 million Nigerians in 2050. And this year marks the 10th anniversary of the World Day for Decent Work, which falls on the 7th of October every year. Now, a day where all the trade unions in the world will stand up for decent work. Decent work, according to the International Labour Organization, ILO, must be at the center of government actions to bring back economic growth and build a new global economy that puts people first. Now, this year, the global focus is on the world struggle for living minimum wages and a pay rise for all workers, something we know all too well in this part of the world. It's 9 days to the Nigerian Labour's deadline on the demand for immediate implementation of the new minimum wage. And issues of getting a fair deal of conducive work environment also continues to dominate the front burner for the labour unions as they join the rest of the world to mark this day. Well, just last week, the Labour Minister, Senator Chris Ngige, while reacting to the demands of the NLC, had hinted on a possible downsize of the Labour Union, explaining that a 500 billion naira increase in wage bill is not feasible. The Labour Minister also asked Nigerians to wait for the presentation of the 2020 draft budget, as most of the issues to be discussed are contained in that document. Well, let's talk more about the day and the issues surrounding the new minimum wage. The Director General of the Nigerian Employers Consultative Association, Mr. Timothy Olawale, and the NLC's Head of International Relations, Mr. Uche Ekwe, both join us from our Abuja studios. I'd like to thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on the program.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, let's start from you, NLC's Head of International Relations. Please explain what the issue is with the implementation of the minimum wage in your talks with the federal government. What exactly are you, why exactly are you going on strike October 16th when it's a done deal, it's law that 30,000 naira is the new minimum wage?
Yeah, the issue there is clear. The issue of consequential adjustment. That's what this issue in contention with the public service. These issues, fortunately we have the DG of NECA here, seems not to be an issue at the private sector of the economy is with the public sector. You know, the increase in the minimum wage from 18,000 to 30,000, of course, means that hitherto probably a worker at grade level 6 may have been earning like 22,000. And with this increase, which makes the floor level to earn 30,000, there is a distortion in hierarchy and in seniority. And those have been captured and sorted out with increase in the minimum level 1 to 6. Now, to maintain seniority and relativity, there is a need to discuss, and which has been historically the way it used to be done, an adjustment ratio from grade level 7 to 14 and consequently 15 to 17. It is this consequential adjustment that has been the issue of contestation, where we proposed about 66%, and since negotiations have started, we have done downward movement to 29% and 24% respectively. That is between 7 to 14 and 15 to 17. The government on its side have only moved to 11% and 6.5%. And that is not acceptable to us. After that, the government side sought for a space to do consultations. And this consultation is taking ages now. The strike notice is only saying, get back to the negotiating table and resolve this matter. We are concerned that as the longer this drags, it will create new problems of payment of arrears, because this was signed into law since April 18, and that is when the minimum wage takes effect. The longer is delayed, it will now mean you will have a greater number of months you will pay arrears, and that will become a new argument of inability and ability to pay.
So, Mr. Ekwe, hold on a moment, if I may, just jump in here. Governors, some of them are clear that, there is rather a comment by the chairman of the Nigeria Governors Forum, Mr. Kaide Fayemi, who explained that governors are very clear that a new national minimum wage increase is not tantamount to a general wage review, explaining that whilst they know that there may be a need for a minimal consequential adjustment, the governors are, together with the federal government, that this should not exceed 9%.
Well, you know the governors never wanted the minimum wage. So we cannot be surprised anything coming from the governors. The governors from point one were opposed to minimum wage, and they never pretended to be opposed to the minimum wage. So the governors' positions are not new. They are something that have been there with us. But we are taking it bit by bit. We are engaging the public sector, federal government, and we take them state by state. Each state will answer for himself.
Let's find out from the DG NECA, who's with us there, Mr. Olawale. What are your thoughts on, the whole back and forth, the demands of labor, the position of the federal government, and also the state governments? From your standpoint, what's your view?
Well, let me first establish that I represent the private sector. And in the private sector, there are no issues. As a matter of fact, we've implemented and we have moved on. Having established that, let me also say that we are also concerned about the situation between the government and labor. Why we are concerned is basically the fact that when the chips are down, every Nigerian will suffer the consequences. And that is exactly why we are saying that ab initio, we had said there is no substitute for dialogue, that they should keep talking and discussing among themselves until they reach an understanding that is implementable. We understand the position of government that they don't want to commit to what is not sustainable. And we had said, come to the table with your facts and figures. Labor is not unreasonable. When you present facts and figures to them, to convince them about your situation, we expect them to be reasonable. And we've also advised labor, do not be stuck on your position. Negotiation is about give and take. You have to shift positions until you arrive at a win-win situation that's workable for all parties in the industrial relations system. Furthermore, the main issue now is the threat of strike as a way of seeking redress to move government forward with regards to making a decision on this consequential agreement. It seems to have reached a deadlock, but I want to say that our position as organized private sector, and that has been our practice, is that strike or industrial action should be the very last resort when it comes to industrial dispute resolution. And both labor and government are well-versed and knowledgeable in the provisions of our labor law that makes a very extensive provision on how we resolve issues in a situation of deadlock as we have it now. And we have advised them individually and collectively that one of them or both parties could decide to approach the NIC, that's the National Industrial Court, for adjudication on the matter. And since they are both law-abiding parties, we expect that that will resolve the issue for or against whatever the outcome is. We expect that they are going to respect the outcome. And that will save us all the pain of another strike or industrial action, which will cause loss of productivity. And even the workers as well will also suffer the consequences of strikes. So that's our position.
All right. Mr. Ekwe, what's your thought about that option, avoiding a strike action? Because, it's a lose-lose for everyone.
Well, the good news is that the DG of NECA have said that this matter had been resolved at the private sector, and it was resolved through negotiation. And those who resolve it were still labor people within them. That's extra proof of being reasonable people. We are reasonable the moment we see goodwill, the moment we see honesty, the moment facts and figures are put on the table with clarity. We've heard about brandishing of figures from some of the representatives of governments, making claims, very bogus claims, about what the increase can create in the system. But it tips into the existing 2019 budget. Taking the State House, for example, shows that the capital expenditure is about 5-point-something billion, amounting total 6%. Recurrent expenditure, 9.7 billion, 64%. But out of it, overhead cost is 2.7 billion, which is 28%. Salaries and wages, 1.2 billion, 8% of the total budget. The entire budget, salaries and wages, is 13% of the recurrent expenditure. Because, these figures are quoted. Whenever people say, the recurrent cannot be more than the capital, the picture is given that salaries and wages are that percentage. But let it be on record that it's just 13%. That's salaries and wages. The other overhead costs, which if you go through the budget, most of the times are reputations of items that are provided every year. We know these workers you're talking about work on this budget, have the facts and figures. We know when honesty is brought to the table for negotiation. And we are reasonable people that will know the need to do the concessions.
Well, we'll see what happens. We have a couple of days. We'd like to thank you. We know that negotiations will still be ongoing till the October 16th, but we'd like to thank our guest, the Director General of the Nigerian Employers Consultative Association, Mr. Timothy Olawale, and NLC's Head of International Relations, Mr. Uche Ekwe, for joining us on the program. When we return, we'll be talking a bit about security. Please stay with us.